Everybody on the left is just like, we want civil rights. Everybody on the right is just like, we want to kill black people. What a great, the one MLK quote that every single lefty likes to wheel out.
Political gridlock is the doctrine of American centrism.
To be clear, that's actually the foundation upon which our legislative body is built. I've said this before and people have tried to argue, but I will say it again because I'm right and fuck you. I'm a big proponent of opening the borders because let people sort themselves economically, just register people. But wait, hold on. Also, okay, hold on. For some of new second thought video, how the moderates serve the right. Oh boy. Jesus, why are we posting not safe word? Chill. It's going to be the liberals aren't left shit. Yes, moderates. He's going to probably include the entire Democratic Party as the moderates, or at the very least, every non-progressive Democrat. This channel is probably one of the worst channels I've seen on YouTube in terms of like intelligence in content. Like, oh my God, it's actually so bad.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. We just did a major overhaul of our patrons-only Discord server, so if you'd like to join our growing community and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. You've read the title, you've seen the thumbnail, you've inspected the element and combed through the metadata. This episode is about moderates, centrists, independents, pragmatists, middle grounders, fence straddlers, and the ungodly, unceremonious, electable politician. Today,
nothing makes progressives more upset when you talk about electability because they realize that none of their fucking opinions are anywhere near as popular as they think they are because most of them are dog shit.
We're looking at everyone's political neighbors in the middle of the street. Let's get this started. Cue the MLK.
This is literally the best representation of the left versus the right, by the way. Like, everybody on the left is just like, we want civil rights. Everybody on the right is just like, we want to kill black people. What a great way to start this video off. Nice.
First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate.
The one MLK quote that every single lefty likes to wheel out and then throw him back in the closet. Okay, we're done with you, Barton.
I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice.
Look, I already know what you're going to say. JT, please describe to me in political science terms what a moderate is. Fine, but only because I want to. And as punishment for being so presumptuous, I'll start with the difference between the left and the right. You probably already know the story of the two terms. During the French Revolution, those who wanted to laisser les bon temps brûler with absolute monarchical power sat on the right side of the assembly, their version of the House, and the no-good radicals who wanted to try out terrifying and capricious parliamentary monarchy, sat on the left. This is a pretty specific issue to disagree about. So when people, i.e. academics with too much free time, try to come up with meaningful differences between the left and the right that hold true across most of global political history, you get very vague distinctions between the two political families. While today we associate the left and the right mostly with their stances on specific economic issues or cultural debates, the most fundamental distinction that you can probably draw between these two is that the left seeks to change society into something new, and the right seeks to preserve present society or go back to something old. In practice, that usually means the left seeks to undermine established hierarchies and distribute power and wealth more equally, and the right seeks to preserve hierarchy and order since most existing societies are or were built around power being concentrated in very few hands. But obviously, such a simple distinction will certainly make you mad, so be sure to comment why and how I've actually gotten it completely wrong in the comments section. I sure would hate for this video to get more engagement. Anyway, we've lost the plot a little bit here. We're not focusing on either of these groups. We're talking about the illuminated minds who can look past the squabbling of these dirty extremes. Moderates. The people who reject petty ideological battles, and at the end of the day, just know better than you and I. Just listen to how terrible the extremes are in this No Labels video on the Biden infrastructure bill.
We've seen this movie before.
Total.
No, not those movies. This one.
We will not support bipartisan legislation.
I'm telling the Republican senators that we're not going to stand for it.
The extremes on the left and right are trying to defeat a two-party solution for partisan purposes. 3 out of 4 Americans agree on the infrastructure bill that creates jobs, helps families, doesn't raise taxes, and powers America to beat China. Don't listen to the extremes. Support bipartisan infrastructure now.
Cool. Okay, fine. Let's be a little bit more charitable and actually understand what's going on here. Centrists and moderates in the US, the two terms are pretty much interchangeable, are people and politicians who are not entirely satisfied with the political programs of either.
I don't know if in US politics, nothing he said in this video so far has been really wrong. I don't know if I agree that, I don't know, is centrist a term that's used outside of like the internet? I definitely hear moderates and I definitely hear independents, but I don't know if I hear people say centrist. That sounds like that sounds more like an internet kind of like YouTuber term. Like I'm trying to think like Fox News, CNN, politicians. I feel like I don't usually hear the term centrist. I feel like I always hear moderates and I always hear independents. But maybe there's something I've missed there. I don't know.
Major political party. Unlike people who reject both parties.
Centrist is used in political party names in Europe. Yeah, maybe in Europe. Something that's really interesting. Oh, I've started using this program called Zotero to save articles, but I don't think I was using it back then. It was either a 538 article or it might have been a NOAA. Oh, I've heard centrist Dems. I've heard that before. Well, maybe have I? I'm not sure. There is an article on It had to do with basically the idea is there is no centrist in America. There aren't really centrists and there aren't really moderates. But instead, what happens is we tend to call people moderates or centrists when they have a variety of positions that aren't really neatly filed into like the Republican or the Democratic Party. That's what actually happens. That I think it's incredibly rare to find somebody who's like in the middle on abortion and gun rights and big versus small government. Like that's actually a really difficult thing to find. Oh, that 538 article, that might be it. The moderate middle is a myth. Instead, what happens is you actually have a collection of people who like, these are all people that are super pro-life. They're super pro-choice. I think people should have abortions, but they're also like really big in guns. They really like guns. So these people will be called moderates or centrists, but they don't actually have moderate or centrist opinions. They just have a collection of things that they agree with on the left and a collection of things they agree with on the right, basically. Yeah. I feel like that's an important distinction to have because sometimes people use the term centrist, like this guy did in the beginning of his video. We're like, oh, we need to compromise on civil rights. I don't think that's really what a moderate is. A moderate is just somebody that doesn't fully agree with one political party. They have like things that they agree with both parties about. How long are you sponsored by Surfshark? I think we renewed for another 3 months, which is crazy to me, but I guess you guys are buying it, so good job.
From the opposite ends of the spectrum, moderate politicians, moderates in the US, the two terms are pretty much understand what's going on here. Centrists and moderates in the US, the two terms are pretty much interchangeable, are people and politicians who are not entirely satisfied with the political programs of either major political party. Unlike people who reject both parties from the opposite ends of the spectrum, moderates are most at home in the supposed bipartisan middle. They usually like saying things like, "We're neither left nor right." We'll get to that sentence in a minute. But first, we might want to understand centrists a little better. If we are to assume the definition of left and right as historically transcendent terms about the stance one has towards present society and values like egalitarianism, being a centrist doesn't really make sense. Over time, movements that start out on the left, like liberalism...
Okay, so he's making basically the big mistake that I just said in the beginning of the video. So people assume that centrist means that you agree with no positions on the left or right, but rather you want a moderated position between everything. That's not true, though. Here's an example of what might be, like, this person might be considered like a moderate, right? You might have a coal worker that lives in West Virginia. Sorry, I was thinking I meant to say it, right? You might have like a coal worker that lives in West Virginia, And this guy might actually be like, he might be pro-gun, and he might be anti-abortion. But he, this guy's a coworker. He's a union guy. He's also like really big in favor of like worker rights, and he doesn't like the fact that Republicans constantly try to like fuck over unions and shit. So even though he's conservative on some social issues, this guy might come out and vote Democrat. I believe this is what Blue Dog Democrats were like way back in the day, right? You might get a guy that's like socially conservative in a lot of positions, but he's left leaning when it comes to some economic things, and that's enough for him to vote Democrat. So this idea of like that guy's a moderate, meaning he's in the middle of everything, that's not true. That's not what moderates are. Moderates aren't people that are in the middle of everything. They feel strongly about things, but those things just come from both the left and right political parties in the United States. Oh yeah, as well as the Reagan Republicans who were from Detroit, sure.
Republicanism, or even parliamentary monarchy, become solidly right-wing movements without ever changing their ideology because they replace the old right and become contested by the new, more radical left. In such a position, centrism becomes nothing more than a conservative ideology. Its prime directive is resistance to change.
Wait, this is a really, okay, fuck. I didn't initially disagree with his like changing versus keeping the same, but like, if that's true, doesn't that mean everything becomes conservatism eventually? Like, what if we reached the perfect egalitarian society and then we didn't want to change it anymore because it was perfectly egalitarian? Did we just become conservatives? Isn't that kind of a weird way to look at it? Or because we don't want to change anything now, we want to conserve it? Okay.
And as a result, it's not, as they claim, neither left nor right, it's just right-wing. It might have been on the left in yesterday's society, but now that the goals of the old left are the established order and have become the new conservative right, preserving present society with only incremental and moderate reform, which is what centrists believe in, becomes a profoundly conservative worldview. And it makes sense that this is where moderacy settles, because it has to compromise between two completely opposing ideas: changing society in a new way or keeping it the same. Think about classic centrist statements like, "We just need a mix."
Fuck, now I feel like I want to fight on this definition a little bit more. Like, changing society in a new way versus keeping it the same. Like, couldn't you argue that both sides want to do different things for both things? That was vague. But like, when it comes to Social Security, that's something that we want to conserve, right? Most people are in favor of Social Security. But Republicans trying to replace Social Security with private insurance, wouldn't that make them progressive under that definition? They're trying to progressively change it into something new. But liberals on the left, or socialists on the left or whatever, they're conservatives. They're trying to conserve Social Security as the old order, right? Or, Republicans that are trying to destroy unions, like, oh, well, we want to move into like where everything is, all open shops, anybody, right to work, all of that. That's like a newer way to view employment. No unions at all. Like, well, that's new. That's progressive. But liberals or lefties they're very conservative. They want to go back to like old like union structures. Like that's a pretty conservative. You're trying to conserve with. That's kind of ordinarily when someone's like, oh, conservatives want to conserve and progressives want to change. Like, okay, whatever, I guess. But if we're going to be really strict on this definition, now we're going to start to use it in arguments. I don't know if that really works that well.
Or keeping it the same. Think about classic centrist statements like, "We just need a mix of socialism and capitalism," an idea that makes absolutely zero sense when you understand the two ideologies and that their base disagreement about the ownership of the means of production makes them fundamentally incompatible. Okay, this all might seem a little confusing. Let's get away from the theory for a second and look at something concrete, like the Biden brand of centrism.
It's funny he'll say that, but there's a whole brand of socialists called market socialists that is also inherently contradictory, because a socialist should want to change both the means of production and the mode of production, not producing things in the commodity form. You don't want to produce things for a profit. You want to produce things that are socially necessary and good. So a market socialist is failing half of that. So market socialists are a mix of capitalism and socialism in a way that's both contradictory, but it also works because people say it does. But whatever. I don't know.
For a second and look at something concrete, like the Biden brand of centrism.
Is this the guy who has a second channel where he reviews supercars? Yeah, he does. I can't believe we found that. Oh my God. He does. Does anybody have a link to that second channel? Oh my God, dude. It's actually just so perfect. I don't even remember how we stumbled onto it. Oh yeah, it was this here.
If you've been on the channel for a while, you've probably heard me mention the secret project I've been working on with Joseph from Real Life Lore. Well, after almost a year of planning and shooting, we're finally ready to launch. As of right now, you can catch our new car show, Grand Test Auto, right here on YouTube. We review everything from muscle cars to electrics to autocycles, supercars, and of course, the Toyota Corolla. Grand Test Auto will always be free and supported by sponsors here on YouTube. But if you'd like to watch the show ad-free and see new episodes months before everybody else, you can sign up for an account on Nebula and watch Grand Test Auto along with tons of other original content from your favorite educational YouTubers. Either way, we've had a lot of fun making this new show, and we hope you guys will love it too. So, if you like cars, or you just want to see Second Thought and Real Life Lore joke about how bad the Corolla is for 20 minutes, come check out Grand Test Auto by following the link below.
Wait, what's wrong with the Corolla? Or do they just mean like as like a racing car, it's not good? I thought Corollas were like notoriously like reliable cars. Like that's a car that you buy when you want to have a daily driver that lasts for like 300, 400,000 miles or something. Maybe not 300,000 or 400,000, but like. Am I the only one confused by the irony of a channel heavily devoted to class struggle and climate crisis awareness making a channel about test driving wildly expensive and extremely wasteful vehicles? To get these comments. Oh, that was the only bad one though. Everybody else is on board with it. How interesting.
I know how to make government work. Not because I've talked or tweeted about it, but because I've done it. I've worked across the aisle to reach consensus, to help make government work in the past. I can do that again with your help.
Oh, I said this a couple times, and I've been totally wrong. We did get some Republican votes on the, fuck, I don't remember the name of the bill. The big one that passed, the infrastructure bill. Is it called the infrastructure bill? Was there an official name for it? There were like 6 or 7 Republicans, I think, that voted on that in the Senate. Wait, 16? Oh, maybe there were more. Sorry. No, it's not the Build Back Better. Is it just bipartisan infrastructure bill? Yeah, that one. So good job on that, I guess, yeah. 19 Republicans? Yeah, they're like 16.
Compromise itself is not a dirty word. Consensus is not a weakness. It's the only way our founders down the road there thought it was the only way we could govern. It was necessary. It was designed the way the Constitution sits. It requires consensus.
This speech is Biden's Freebird. Biden, like pretty much every centrist, is a big fan of compromise. Reaching across the aisle to get past political gridlock is the doctrine of American centrism.
To be clear, that's actually the foundation upon which our legislative body is built. I've said this before and people have tried to argue, but I will say it again because I'm right and fuck you. I think America is relatively unique in that we have 2 different bodies in our legislature that both have real power, okay? Now, before some of you baby Europeans get mad, like, well, actually, we have 2 different legislative bodies too. In the United States, the Senate, our upper legislative body, and the House, the lower legislative body, are both elected by the people, and they both have very real power. It's not like, you know, the UK's upper body, the House of Lords, where they more or less are signing off on everything or giving some feedback, or other European bodies where like, yeah, they have an upper house, but like, they're either largely unelected or they just, it's like a rubber stamp. They don't actually like fight back. You know, like in the United States, we have 2 very powerful, equally powerful legislative bodies that have to come to agreements on each other. Our system, whether you think it's a good idea or not, and you can think it's a bad idea, that's fine. You can think it's a bad idea, but it is built on gridlock. You need some amount of compromise there, a lot of compromise to get stuff passed. If you disagree with that, that's fine, but don't say that like, that's just part of American centrism. No, that's like American foundational ideology, okay? Is there a reason to think it's better? There are arguments for and against it, but I'm just saying that like the American system is built on gridlock. It truly is. It's very difficult to pass legislation in the United States legislature.
And when you hear him talk about it, you can kind of get sucked into the idea that this form of compromise is what makes politics, and therefore society, progress. It appeals to our vision of the democratic ideal, A society in which everyone gathers around the table to discuss an issue and then comes to a mutual decision that compromises on the various interests represented by the assembly. And if, after all, nobody compromises, we might very well not get anywhere. In American politics, this is anything but democratic, though.
You would agree right now that the current system is inefficient? I actually don't. And you know what? This might be where studying other countries could be fun, because I'm interested on countries that can pass legislation more easily. So right now, it feels like there's a lot of gridlock in the US system, and that seems like a bad thing, you know? And I think it kind of is a bad thing. However, well, when we talk about like a bad thing, well, what's the alternative? Let's say that it was way easier to get legislation passed in America. Do you think that it's worse right now that we have some gridlock? Or what if you could pass big legislation with like 45 votes or something? Let's say that you started doing that over and over and over again. Well, every 4 years, it would be like fucking whiplash. Can you imagine the legislative agenda that Obama would have passed, and then you get Trump for 4 years, and now you've got his entire legislative agenda on the table that's going to be passed? Like, I don't know what would be worse there, you know? It might literally be that our gridlock right now sucks, but the opposite would lead like to sure destruction, because we would be getting totally new legislative agendas every single 4 years, you know? I think that looking at what happens with our executive orders can be a good example of what could happen, you know?
And far from leading to the progress we're promised, we get a government that stagnates or actively pursues regressive, reactionary politics. Take immigration. For over a year, we heard just about every Democrat call out the very real far-right policies enacted by the Trump admin at the Mexican border. One of these was the invocation of Title 42. A policy choice that might as well be called, oh, it really is just that easy. At the start of the pandemic, the Trump administration used the pretext of national health and COVID-19 to close the southern border pretty much completely. Nobody comes in, and a whole lot of people go out. It was a brilliant success for conservatives and reactionaries, and a massive step back in immigration law. And to this day, Title 42 still stands. No, sorry, that makes it seem like people aren't paying attention to it. The Biden administration is defending it tooth and nail in the courts. True to the spirit of compromise, Biden changed the application of the rule so that it would no longer apply to unaccompanied minors. But on the back end, has used it to expel around 700,000 migrants. Far more than the Trump administration ever achieved with a—
Hold on. Expel 700,000 migrants or turn them away at the border. Now, if I were to go and look it up, I'm pretty sure that my interpretation is correct, but even just reading the subtext, under the Trump administration, more than 444,000 migrants were sent back across the border using Title 42, and more than 690,000 migrants have been expelled through the policy since Biden took office. Are we talking about turning people back at the border? Because that's way different than like taking somebody that's lived in California for 10 years and then sending them back to Mexico, right? That's a way different thing. Find the article. Biden administration appeals judge, Trump era pandemic policy. Yeah, because if they were being actually turned away like that, I imagine it would be like deported. That's the word that we would see. Deported, not turned away. But let's see. This is probably the article. September 17th. The Biden administration is appealing a judge's order to stop using the Trump-era pandemic policy that allows for the rapid expulsion of migrants without giving them a chance to apply for asylum. So this is people coming to the border applying for asylum. It's not kicking people out of the country. That's what it sounds like so far. The Department of Justice on Friday filed an appeal of U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan's ruling Thursday that bars the federal government from expelling migrants under the public health law known as Title 42. Sullivan ordered the ruling to go into effect in 14 days. The appeal is the latest move by the Biden administration addressed the 20-year high surge of migrants from Mexico and Central America crossing the border illegally, which remains a political flashpoint between Republicans and progressive Democrats. Title 42 was first introduced by former President Donald Trump in March 2020 over concerns about the coronavirus pandemic. It gave the governments the power to turn back any migrant caught crossing the border illegally, regardless of their country of origin, to stop the spread of COVID-19. While President Joe Biden has worked to roll back many of his predecessors' hardline immigration policies, he renewed Title 42 last month, after the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued an updated order justifying its use due to the ongoing pandemic. The CDC's order said the policy would stay in effect until the border migration of non-U.S. citizens from Mexico to Canada has ceased to be a serious danger to the public health. Since the outset of the pandemic, more than 1 million migrants have been expelled under the policy, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection data. Under the Trump administration, more than 444,000 migrants were sent back across the border using Title 42, and more than 690,000 migrants have been expelled through the policy since Biden took office in January. The Biden administration's decision to maintain Title 42 was a blow to many immigration advocates and progressive Democrats who hoped the federal government would choose to put an end to the policy after Thursday's ruling. We're upset because the Biden administration devoted its precious time and energy to fighting tooth and nail to uphold President Trump's xenophobic immigration policies, exposing thousands of people to harm, said Noah Gottschalk, the global policy lead for Oxfam America, in a Twitter post Friday. I said extremely disappointing, but defending Title 42. The Biden administration has made it clear that it's willing to deny asylum-seeking families their right to a full and fair process to receive protection in the United States. Okay, so to be clear, so now that we've read a little bit about this, so this has to do with turning back people that are coming to seek asylum at the border. That's what this has to do with, right?
Choice that might as well be called, oh, it really is just that easy. At the start of the pandemic, the Trump administration used the pretext of national health and COVID-19 to close the southern border pretty much completely. Nobody comes in, and a whole lot of people go out.
Immigration numbers to United States in 2020. Was our southern border closed completely? Is there a way where I can see how many people, or was this just people being turned back to from that were seeking asylum? I don't know if the numbers are updated yet for 2020. What is that noise? Whatever. The response is that what Biden is doing is still bad and no better or worse than Trump. Is this true? So my understanding is that the main issue that people had with Trump was that they had policies where they were separating families at the border. That was the really big thing that people were upset about, the separating families at the border. However, I don't know what you can't just let everybody in. I'm a big proponent of opening the borders because let people serve themselves economically, just register people. But if we haven't opened our borders, if we don't let people immigrate that easily, you can't just let people come into the country illegally. I don't know if that's a debate that you can have with people, but I'm sorry, but you can't do that. If you have a certain immigration policy, you can't just open the borders and let anybody in. You just can't do that. Why would you? You just can't do that. I'm sorry. So this idea that it's bad that Democrats aren't just letting every single illegal immigrant in or letting every single asylum seeker is that's just reality. It's not even a bad thing, yeah. The rise and importance of secret Congress. You linked me to this article. I think I've read this before. Doesn't this have to do with basically the idea that Congress, there are people in Congress that negotiate these bills and stuff secretly beforehand so that they can get more progress done on actually passing legislation without making it a big public affair that might threaten certain legislation? I feel like I've read this before, but maybe not. But okay.
It was a brilliant success for conservatives and reactionaries, and a massive step back in immigration law. In a year,
so
we get a government that stagnates or actively pursues regressive, reactionary politics. Take immigration. For over a year, we heard just about every Democrat call out the very real far-right policies enacted by the Trump admin at the Mexican border. One of these was the invocation of Title 42.
I guess some people might have been mad, but were they? Were mainstream politicians getting upset that we were turning people away in the middle of the pandemic? Or were they upset because of the kids in cages? I could understand very progressive people, so like AOC or the Squad getting upset about it, but with like Nancy Pelosi, were mainstream Democrats saying shit like, oh no, we need to let everybody immigrate during the pandemic? I could, and I'm being honest, maybe I missed that, but I feel like I didn't hear people really say that. Maybe they did and I just missed it.
A policy
It'd be nice if he actually included some like source or reference there.
Choice that might as well be called, oh, it really is just that easy. At the start of the pandemic, the Trump administration used the pretext of national health and COVID-19 to close the southern border pretty much completely. Nobody comes in, and a whole lot of people go out.
Why not say what Title 42, like the fact that like the CDC supported it, or like, is this even like a bad thing? I don't know. I don't know what his prescription was. Should we be letting anybody that comes in saying they're from a country seeking asylum like come into the country and like remain here indefinitely? Is that during a global pandemic? Is that something we should be doing?
It was a brilliant success for conservatives and reactionaries, and a massive step back in immigration law. And to this day...
Wait, and it doesn't sound like a massive step back in immigration law. It just sounds like one thing that wasn't, like, it sounds like maintaining the status quo for this particular immigration law. It doesn't sound like a massive step back at all.
Title 42 still stands. No, sorry, that makes it seem like people aren't paying attention to it. The Biden administration is defending it tooth and nail in the courts. True to the spirit of compromise, Biden changed the application of the rule so that it would no longer apply to unaccompanied minors, but on the back end has used it to expel around 700,000 migrants, far more than the Trump administration ever achieved with its paltry 450,000.
Okay, you might disagree with me here, but I disagree with you if you disagree with me. He's phrasing this in a way that makes it sound like the Biden administration is expelling. Is that the word he used? Expel? Is like actually deporting migrants in the United States, has used it to expel around
700.
But that's not what's happening here. It's turning people away at the border. But I think that you can go look the data up on this. I'm too lazy to look it up. But I know I'm right, okay? Every time there's a Democrat in office, because Democrats are seen as being softer on immigration, you typically have a lot more people trying to illegally immigrate to the United States. So I'm going to go find the stats. I know I'm right on that. Or if I'm wrong, you can look into it. But like that's like a trend I think that you see like pretty regularly whenever Democrats are in office. So if both people are literally enforcing the border the same way, it's always going to look like the Democrats are worse because more people are trying to illegally immigrate when Democrats are in office.
100,000 migrants, far more than the Trump administration ever achieved with its paltry 450,000. Simultaneously, Biden has also continued the construction of the border wall, has led the infamous Do Not Come campaign.
Okay, wait, when you say construction of the border wall, we have border walls. What do you mean? Is he talking about like the wall? I don't even know if there was the wall. Like, Destiny, you're kind of right, but also kind of wrong. Expelling is the language used for Title 42. It's literally called Title 42 expulsion. I don't care what it's called. What I care about is what is common parlance, right? What do people hear when you say something? And when you talk about an immigrant being expelled from the country, most people hear that as deported. Guaranteed. I'll bet you $1 million on it. If I go and I tell an American, hey, we're going to expel like 100 immigrants, what does that mean to you? Oh, you're like kicking them out of the country? You're like deporting them? That's what most people hear. Sorry.
And left untouched migrant detention facilities. You'll remember them as concentration camps during the Trump presidency. Now, it's not that Biden has done nothing for progressive immigration.
Wait, are these are these pictures? Oh, fuck, I don't trust anything. Does this video come from like footage under the Biden administration right now? I'm so curious. Also, wait, hold on. Also, okay, hold on. For some of this, you had to do this. I remember these arguments so long ago. People got so mad that you had migrant detention facilities for minors and stuff.
You'll remember them as...
But like, you have to. What are you supposed to do with them? You can't just release them into the country. And some people get really mad when you kick them out or send them back because some of them are children. What are you supposed to do? You have to detain them for a while. There's no getting around that. I don't know what people think you're supposed to do here. I don't know what people think the solution is.
Concentration camps during the Trump presidency. Now, it's not that Biden has done nothing for progressive immigration politics. He's reinstated DACA and done work to reunite separated families.
Oh, that's good.
But the majority of his platform has been tweaking Trump-era policies in the spirit of compromise, rather than reversing them entirely and treating them like the indefensible right-wing policies that they are. Centrism isn't incremental progress in these circumstances. Malcolm X said it best.
You feel, however, that we're making progress in this country and worldwide?
No. I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. You pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the blow made. They won't even admit the knife is there.
When reactionary and far-right politics are so dominant in a society as the US, and so regularly find their way to institutions of power.
If you wanted to argue with Malcolm X, technically in his analogy actually doesn't fit. It does defend centrism, right? Like if somebody's got a knife in my back for 9 inches, it's not progress. If it's 6 inches, that's not progress. When you pull it, well, actually, yes, it is. Because in order to pull it out and treat the wound, first you have to pull it out 3 inches, then you got to pull it out 3 more inches, then you have to pull it out, right? Technically, it is progress. Okay, we're going by the definitions of work, all right?
Or are baked in right from the start. The centrist stance of compromise and incremental retroactive change allows for politics to jump to the right without ever really coming back. How many politicians today pretend that there's a reasonable compromise between the "we need healthcare" left and the "we need an ethno-state" right?
That's really your characterization of Republicans? What? Okay.
Title 42 still stands because the myopic compromise of moderate ideology fails to take into account longer political trends. There are, of course, some exceptions to the rightward shift of American politics, but the attachment to moderation at all costs makes any left-wing legislation a blip in what is otherwise a sea of reactionary bravado. But most centrists don't like this, and that's not how they think about themselves. They don't like the idea that they're just a mushy average of the left and the right, or a simple tool of...
So again, this is not, that a moderate is not the mushy average of left and right. That is just not an accurate reading of what a moderate is. There is no American moderate that exists like that. It's a myth. People aren't like that. There aren't these large swaths of people in the US that are like, I'm iffy on abortion, I'm iffy on guns, I'm iffy on immigration, I'm iffy on health. These people don't exist.
Of conservative politics. Instead, moderates describe their stance something like this. I don't care whether something comes from the left or the right. I just look at the idea and judge it on its own merit. Here, the tricky centrist thinks he's gotten us. We couldn't possibly disagree with the idea of sensibly considering multiple options and forming an opinion based on rational cost and benefit analyses. And he's right, but at the end of the day, centrism falls right back into the same place whether it sees its role as averaging out the left and the right, or picking and choosing from each side. And that's because the Overton window is so small and so skewed in the US. The choices centrists make are limited by the acceptable politics they are contextualized in. And the American political spectrum being so stunted toward the right with only figures like Bernie Sanders and his social democratic politics even approaching the left means that centrism will by default fall into the conservative, stagnatory, or even regressive role. There just aren't that many options to choose from, and they're mostly on the same side anyway. Even if the centrist voter is a careful and considerate pragmatist who doesn't blindly follow the party line and thinks entirely for themselves on every topic and political debate, the inevitable fact that they will be picking and choosing policies from the fascistic Trumpism in the Republican Party and the neoliberal capitalism of the Democrats, to the extent that they can even be differentiated at times, means they'll never actually consider the full range of political debate because the left isn't prominently represented.
Why? That's the killer question. Why isn't there good representation of the left? It's because they're not fucking popular. It's because nobody fucking likes them, okay?
The result is the center conserves far more than it progresses. And when it chooses to conserve something built by the right, it actively engages in regressive, reactionary politics. There's also the issue that politicians who call themselves the center aren't really doing so in good faith. While they may represent the center between elected officials, The actual center of the American people is far more to the left on many key issues than the center of the American political class.
Then where are they? Then why don't they win any elections? Where are all of these politicians at that could just come and win these elections so easily if this was the case? Where are they?
Just look at this clip featuring celebrity centrist Joe Lieberman.
Your new book is called The Centrist Solution. You were a famous quote-unquote centrist senator. And yet my issue with that word is that centrist doesn't necessarily reflect the American people's views. I want to pull up some polling. Here are some of the measures in that Build Back Better bill that quote-unquote centrists like Manchin and Sinema want to get rid of. Here's how popular they are. Hugely popular across the spectrum. 83% support, 84% support, 73% support. And yet you and Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema oppose many of those measures that the American people overwhelmingly support. So the question is, how in the world does that make you a centrist? Surely based on that polling, Bernie Sanders is closer to the center of American politics and public opinion than you are or Joe Manchin is.
Yeah, I don't think so, but it's a great question. That's not happening enough now. We could probably get some of those good things done on that list if people, instead of trying to push it through, would sit down and talk to each other and agree.
And here we...
Okay, so Lieberman is an idiot. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he doesn't know. I don't know. Politicians are dumb, right? So the problem is, okay, I've learned this lesson. Who knows what the problem is? Go. What am I about to say? Chat. Yeah, okay, good job. Pico de Gallo, okay? You got it, okay? National level polling, horrible idea. National level polling does not tell you anything about anything. It is the most worthless thing. Imagine you ask your mom and dad, can I stay up until 10:30 tonight? If somebody were to give you a national poll like, oh, well, 62% of parents said yes, who the fuck cares? Who cares what the national poll said? I need to know what my mom and dad are going to say, right? Same thing with any policy, right? A representative in Congress doesn't look at national polls. They shouldn't be. That's not their job, right? Their job is to look at what their constituents want, you know?
We get back to that MLK quote. It's absurd to think that any moderate Democrat or any Republican would ever agree to any of these policies that have overwhelming support among Americans if the only difference was that they were sat down and talked to as opposed to having things, quote, pushed through. There is no way that moderate Democrats like Manchin, Sinema, or Biden are going to be convinced by good argumentation presented politely when that is contending with the massive sums of money changing hands to make sure they remain spoilers. MLK made it very clear.
Actual spoilers. Okay.
The moderates' role in politics is to slow things down to a trickle. Justice gets delayed further and further, never actually realized despite decades of promises, allowing for millions of people to continue suffering injustice and hundreds of thousands more to be brought into the fold. It's trite, but justice delayed is justice denied. The issue we're going to have to figure out is how we do anything about this. In every election, moderates are going to dominate the field because they will continuously be presented as more sensible, measured, and pragmatic than their opponents. They have done the careful electoral calculation and know that between the people who will inevitably vote for them and the people who will never vote for them regardless of what they do, the only way to win is to present themselves to the colossal group of American moderates who won't bother to go any further than see who gets closest to being the exact average of the Democrats and the Republicans.
It's such a stupid... What about single issue voters? You know those exist, right? That breaks your entire like view of these people. Oh, it's such a... This channel is so garbage, dude.
We know Americans want more from their politicians. We know that, for the greatest number of them, those things are further to the left than anything the government has provided in decades. That is a much bigger issue for our democracy than polarization. Democracy is slow by nature, and there are times when that can be a good thing. But when democracy is slowed down artificially like this, just for the sake of slowing it down and not letting things change for the better, when politicians ignore what people not only demand, but desperately need, it no longer resembles democracy nor its ideals. If you're hearing an appeal to authoritarianism or something in these statements, you're not understanding what I'm saying. We need far greater democracy than what we have today. Real democracy. Democracy for the majority. And continuing to venerate moderates in this country won't bring us any closer to getting it. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. As you can probably imagine, when I made the switch to producing political content, I started getting demonetized way more often, and most of my sponsors bailed. It's understandable, but because of this, I'm having to rely more heavily on viewers like you. If you like the kind of videos I'm producing, and you're able to chip in even $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate the support. As a little show of that appreciation, every patron, regardless of donation amount, gets early access to every video, plus access to our patrons-only Discord server. We actually just dropped a major update to the Discord, and there are some really cool new features.
Discord.
We've got everything from a recommended reading list, to a book club, to special channels for our neurodivergent and LGBT comrades. We also have fun medal rolls for people who complete the server challenges. We've built a great little community, and we'd love for—
Okay, no one cares.